Welcome to the Vault Archons. I am the Keeper of Keys Kraz, and today we're just going to go through sleeving some cards and talking a little bit. So, I'm actually quite interested in the next set that's coming out. I don't know when it's going to come out, but I'm getting pretty excited about that one. I really have enjoyed Keyforge. I think that it's just a fantastic game. It's so much fun to play. I've had a fun time every single time I play. Now, I do wish that I had more time to play. Now, I am going to have more time to play here pretty soon, so I'm pretty excited about that. Some of my friends are going to be less busy, and so we'll be able to play some more games. I don't know if I'm going to put games that we play online. I don't know if that's in the plans. We may not. I haven't decided yet on that. I mean, I do have friends who are already agreeable to it. It's just not sure I'm going to put gameplay up. I don't know yet. I'm still undecided. So the other things I was going to talk about is, I've definitely noticed an uptick on the price of the better Mavericks. The good Mavericks are pretty much all rising. I don't know, I think most of them are probably sitting around the $30 mark just at a base. They go up at $30 and within, the day they're gone. So they're going to maintain that price because people are buying them. So those Mavericks are already disappearing pretty good even at that price. So it's probably going to go up even more. They're just not staying on the market. So you can expect that price to continue to tick up. And that's true for really any of the good Mavericks. Good decks are still available. You still got people putting them online. As I've said, I'm not picking them up myself, but I do keep an eye out. There's still new sellers coming on, at buy now $15, buy now $20. Some of the older ones are now starting to go up to $30 on their buy nows. So those have definitely ticked up, but you still have the newer ones coming on there doing a mass box opening and looking at the fact that they're going to get a 50% return on their investment, and so they are like, well, yeah, I'll just open a bunch of them and sell them all for $15. And not being able to, most people not being able to rank these decks really very well at all, means that it's just easier for them to just throw them all up for 15 bucks. And so it's a good deal for them. It's a good deal for the player base. Now, of course, some of those decks that are being listed for 15 bucks are absolute garbage and trash. And, there's Mavericks up that have been up for weeks now that are just terrible. And they're in a terrible deck and they're a terrible Maverick and, just not worth it at all. So you do have that. I haven't paid too much attention to the double rare market. I'm sure that those are probably, especially the more valuable ones, are definitely not going to be staying on the market. You're not going to see, any of the powerful doubles stay up for long, in my opinion. Now, I could be wrong. As I said, I don't track that very closely. But you're definitely seeing a slow increase in the cost of these decks. Especially the better ones, ones that I consider better, ones that have power cards, ones that have huge amber gain, ones that have, something that makes them really special relative to like your average deck that might have, an amber control, maybe a board wipe, and then just some generic creatures, none with super powerful abilities. So you're definitely seeing the ones that have the power, the better power cards and the better combinations are definitely going up. And there can be a lot of reasons for that. It could be, that people that watch my videos are buying them. It could be that people are starting to understand the meta. It could be a lot of things. Now, as far as the bidding goes, I haven't paid a lot of attention to the bidding market, mainly because most of the decks that are up for bid suck. So there's an occasional exception. There's still people putting decks up for $150. Like there's a double Maverick up for sale right now for $150. I don't think it's a very good double Maverick, but because of the rarity of a double Maverick, I don't know if it's worth 150 bucks. But it definitely has value because it's a double Maverick, and those are exceptionally rare. I don't think I wouldn't personally pay that much. That seems a bit overpriced to me, but it doesn't mean that it's completely overpriced. I think that if they came down probably closer to like $40–50, that double Maverick would be picked up pretty quick. just because at that price it's a decent deal. Of course, now I get one of those ones that doesn't want to stay in the sleeve when I'm trying to. So I do think that, you know, if it came down like that, I don't know if it'll sell at $150. That really is a lot to be asking for a deck that's really not playable. I mean, that, as far as I can tell, that deck just doesn't have any good cards. So there is that. There is, like I said, there's just other stuff out there that's definitely going up. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. Horsemen are still way overpriced. I'm sure that's no surprise to anybody. They still haven't come down to... I'd buy a Horseman deck for 10, 15 bucks. Most Horseman decks, in my opinion, are they're just not that good. You know, they add some cards in that I would rather have something else in their place. Now, if it was a really good deck with Horsemen in it, it would be worth having. But most Horseman decks that I've seen just aren't that good. So it seems kind of, you know, like, why would I get one of those when it's just not a very good deck? So those haven't come down into a price range that I'd even be willing to purchase one. I still don't have a Horseman, and I can tell you how much I'm worried about that. Don't care. Don't care. I don't have a Horseman. It's not even on my list of power cards to tell you, you know, how much I don't care about the Horseman. Now, it's not that I don't think that the Horseman... I think the Horseman of Death is a power card. I think the Horseman of War is a power card. I don't think the other two are power cards. Just generally speaking. Now, they can be in the right deck, you know, but again, has to be in the right deck. So it's not that I don't think the Horsemen are a power card. It's just they were so overhyped that, you know, my response to that was like, yep, don't care about the Horsemen. And so I've kind of maintained that stance where, yep, don't care about the Horsemen. Still don't care about the Horsemen. Not gonna care about the Horsemen. There's just so many better cards I'd rather have than the Horsemen. They're just, you know, I can have a 4 Horseman deck, or I can have a deck with multiple Arise in it. A deck with multiple Arise is usually going to be better than a 4 Horseman deck. So the 4 Horsemen are just, it's still way overrated, way overpriced, not worth buying. Now, like I said, if you found one with Epic Quest and had double Horsemen and an Arise in there, that might be a different story. But again, Epic Quest is vulnerable to artifact control. So, yeah, like I said, the Horsemen to me just aren't very impressive. Now, if I had, you know, Horsemen in my, double Horsemen in my Witch of the Eye Maverick deck, that would be cool. But like I said, it would be the Maverick that made the deck, not the Horsemen. What was it? Yeah, it doesn't matter. My point is yeah, I'm still not impressed, and don't have any interest in buying a Horseman. Unless they come down to $10, $15, at which point I'll pick one up just to have it, not because I think it's powerful. So that's kind of what's going on in what I see as the secondary market, or what I think is going on in the secondary market. It's still fluctuating a lot. It's not near as volatile as it used to be, but it definitely has a considerable amount of fluctuation in it. So I definitely would avoid you know, getting sucked into that giant fluctuations that are occurring there. Like I said, I do think it's calming down. I think people are starting to get a little bit better idea of the meta. They're not buying things because they're like, oh, that's, you know, that's got to be something special, right? I think people are starting to buy things because they're like, oh, I do want this card. Oh, I do want that card. Oh, that's good. And so there are going to, now that is going to lead to the fact that there's going to be decks that are going to stay on there that are going to end up having to sell for, you know, way under what their current listing price is. You know, like where they're currently for sale for $15 and they're worth maybe $2. You know, like they're just a trash deck. You know, maybe they're worth a couple of bucks. And I say maybe because, you know, I don't know if it's going to be worth anything in the future either. Like, it's just, yeah, it may have been in the first print, but it just doesn't have any value. You know, it literally is like the equivalent of a Keyforge common. Now, there's not a lot of those decks that are just going to have zero value, but there's definitely a group of them. unless they end up being used in tournaments for the you know, the tournament or the variant that where you get to make your opponent play your weakest deck. If that happens, those weak decks are all going to gain value immediately because then it becomes part of the meta because it's you know, a weak deck. And so that would be an interesting addition. I don't know if that's going to happen. So that's one of the reasons I'm not getting rid of any of my weak decks, because they may end up entering the meta, at least for that specific playstyle. Your mid-low range decks, are probably going to be the ones, if that goes into the meta, your mid-low range decks will then be the ones worth the least. So overall, like I said, I think that the market seems to be stabilizing a little bit, and now it's reacting more slowly. It's not, I don't see the wild swings we saw early. The wild swings, I think, are gone. So now you see more kind of moderate swings in the values of things, where something, oh, everybody's buying Chota Hazard, so slowly but surely Chota Hazard goes up. You know, everybody's buying Mimicry, so slowly but surely Mimicry goes up. I don't think we're seeing the spikes we saw before, you know, with the Horseman, or the Bear Flute was another one that I think had a huge early spike. Troop Call, I think, had kind of a spike early on. Now, don't get me wrong, Bear Flute's a cool card. Troop Call's a cool card. You know, I mean, like a deck with Troop Call or Bear Flute and then a Hunting Witch and a Chota Hazard or a Key Charge would be a really good combination. So it's not that I don't think that there's good combinations out there that use those, but I don't think those themselves make a deck. A Bear Flute and a Troop Call is a weak version of Arise. Now, it is a weak version of Arise, so it's still, you know, can be useful. But it doesn't bring back the power level of creatures that you would get, that you could bring back with Arise. And so, again, Arise. That's the, you know, that's one of those, just, it's a common, but it's definitely a power card. Like it is a very high power card in so many decks. You know, if you have a deck that has really powerful board and you have a Rise, well, guess what? You can bring that really powerful board back. If you have Chota Hazard and you have a Rise or Regeneration, you can bring Chota Hazard back. You know, just there's a lot of really powerful creatures you can bring back that way, and that, of course, because of Arise being such a powerful card, Purge is going to be a big deal. So yeah, I mean, like, you know, I think that's kind of where that's going. So now I'm just gonna kind of talk about the next set. I know you guys have heard me talk about some of this stuff before, so I'm not trying to spend too much time on it. So the next set, now that's something I'm really interested in. I really kind of want to see what's going to happen with the next set. I do not expect that we are going to see any of the original houses in the next set. Now, we may, but I hope all these original houses are removed and they add a whole new set of, you know, 7 houses, and it's a whole new discovery. I think if they did that and they just keep doing that, this game will go and go and go and go. Even if a set comes out that's overpowered, their chaining mechanic is going to solve that. So, for example, if they do come out with something that just ends up being completely broken in, say, set 3, right? And everybody wants it. Well, the thing is that because of their chaining mechanics, right? In your local scene, that deck's going to get chained. To where it becomes, you know, no more overpowered than anything else. And then in the competitive scene, you know, for tournaments and stuff, there's also permanent chains. After you, you know, rank highly in those tournaments, your deck then just gain, you know, after the year or whatever, it's then going to gain a bunch of chains. And so, yeah, you won one year, or you came in second one year, but the next year that deck is not going to be, you're not going to be playing it. It's going to have too many chains to be a competitor. And so you're going to see those decks cycle out no matter what. And so that chaining mechanic really solves one of the biggest problems I think Keyforge could face, which is a deck or decks that are so powerful that nobody can play against them and win. But because those decks are just going to end up chained, well, guess what? There is no deck now that is broken, even potentially broken. Because those chains, once they get placed on that deck, especially on the competitive level, they'll never come off. So, you know, your deck essentially is just going to be permanently chained. Now, that's still going to be a really awesome deck to have, a really cool one to collect. Why? Well, because it was a tournament chained deck that made it really high into the tournament scene. So those decks are going to be worth something. And any decks that contain the key combinations from those decks is going to gain a tremendous amount of value too, especially if they're not chained. So if you have a unchained version of a tournament deck that placed in the top, you know, even top 20, you're going to have a deck that people are going to absolutely want, because it's an unchained version of a powerful deck, you know, with some changes. And so that could very potentially, you know, next year come into the tournament scene and do really, really well. So I think that there is that. I think that's really cool. And so the next set, are we going to see new mechanics in the next set? I hope so. I either hope we see new mechanics, or we see the prevalence of certain mechanics increase while others decrease. So, you know, if there's certain mechanics that end up dominating the first year, that end up dominating the first, you know, tournament scene, you know, like all of a sudden everybody's playing, you know, whatever, you know, Rester and Guntus decks. Now, I don't think everybody's going to be playing Rester and Guntus decks, but let's say that's what happens. And then what will end up happening after that is all those decks will get chained and taken away. But then in the next set, I would like to see, you know, a bunch of basically decks that don't use that kind of mechanic, like a new mechanic of some kind that does something cool and interesting. So I'm hoping we see that, and I suspect we will. I don't think they're going to stick with just the same mechanics over and over again. Keyforge lends itself to allowing just a huge variance in mechanics, and that's not something you always see in these card games, because most of these card games have to be more limited. And the reason they have to be more limited is they have to deal with maintaining the balance. You know, because their cards are, you can swap them in and out of decks. And so you can't have super power cards come out in any set. You know, you can't have, all these codes have been scanned already. You can't have super power cards coming out in any set, because those power cards would then be too overpowered, and they would make everything else lose, you know, lose value. It would really just damage kind of the general market of those games. I think Keyforge is different in this respect. You could have a super powerful set. One second. Okay, back. You could have a super powerful set, and that set, even if the first, say the first set's the most powerful, eventually you're not going to see any first set decks competing in the tournament scene. And if you do, it's going to be very rare, because all the best ones are going to be chained already. You know, from them being played in the tournament scene, from people selling them online for large prices, and then competitive players taking those into the tournament scene, doing really well with them and getting them chained. And then once they get chained, you're just not going to see them in the future tournaments. And so even if a set does come out that's highly overpowered, all those decks in time will be chained out of competitive play. And once they're chained out of competitive play, yeah, it was an amazing set, but you can't play it, you know, in the competitive scene anymore. Now, you can still play it at your local scene, which still makes those cards awesome and amazing. Now, you are going to be pretty heavily chained, you know, to make it to where it's competitive for your opponent. And really, that's a good thing. You know, you don't want to be just, you know, raffle stomping whoever you're facing. That's not going to be fun for them. You may enjoy it at the moment, but the thing is it's not going to be fun for the players, for the average players. And so, in my opinion, you're far better off, you know, playing a variety of decks, and not trying to, just absolutely decimate, whoever you're playing at your local scene, because eventually you're just going to be having enough chains anyways, and it won't, like I said, it won't matter. Now, for stores that don't end up using chains, I think that's more of a problem, because, well, you've got this deck that's super powerful, it stomps everybody, but you don't chain it, right? And so then everybody who plays it just gets completely owned, and nobody wants to play that deck, because it's like, well, they're not chained, they're out of control, basically. So the chain mechanic, I think, is super, super important going forward into future sets. In this set, it's just a very important aspect to Keyforge, and so I think that we can't ignore the chain aspect, and I think we, as players, we need to pay attention to that and understand that, yeah, we may have some superpowered decks, but the chain mechanic is there so those decks are playable against non-superpowered decks, so that we can still win, they can still win, and it's a relatively balanced game. That is kind of the idea behind them. Now, of course, like I said, you are going to be able to play these decks unchained with friends and stuff like that. But if you guys know you're going into a game together, and you've already kind of come to the conclusion, we're not going in with chains. We know that these decks should have chains, but we're not going in with chains. We're just going to play them. That's cool, and that's fun. But I think when you're just dealing with newer players or just kind of at your local scene, you really should, pay attention to the chains. And you should not only should you be, pay attention to, how many chains you have, you should also be proud of how many chains you have. If you're in your local scene, you've managed to get yourself to 20 chains. Either one, your deck is absolutely amazing, or two, you are an incredible player. So either way, you should be proud of that chain level because you're still winning, and that's what got you to 20 chains in the first place. And so I think overall, like I said, in the with the next set, even if it's not as powerful as this set, even if it happens to be weaker, which I don't really particularly think is going to be the case, I think it's going to have just as many potentially super powered combos as this one, just in a different way. And we're not going to know that until we get to spend some time and evaluate it. It's going to probably take, I don't know, I'm going to say it's probably going to take about 2.5 to 3 weeks to really start understanding the meta of the second set. So I do think that, hopefully it's coming in January or February. I highly doubt it's coming in December. Like December is just not going to be a thing for the next set. I just don't see it. I do think we will see it in the near future. I think that it's not going to be, super far out. I just think it's, it's not, I don't think it's as, it's a super current thing. I think we're talking January, February. Maybe as far out as March, but I really hope it's in the first quarter. If it doesn't make it into the first quarter, that would be disappointing. I think Keyforge is a game that kind of needs to have a new set probably every 3 to 6 months, but early on I think we want to see new sets pretty frequently. Later game, I think they can have a little bit more distant release cycle, but definitely early on I'd love to see another set within the next, within 3 to 4 months of it originally coming out. So that would be March, mid-March. So hopefully that's what we see. I'm waiting to see some teasers on that. I really want to see the new cards. What is going to come out? Did they add new houses? Did they remove houses? What did they do? I mean, even if they just removed a house from this set and added a house, that just means that all the original decks with that house then become more collectible, because those basically become your super early set. So I'm curious how they're going to do it. I do want to, but I do want to see it soon. I don't want it to take forever. So hopefully we see the new set in the early part of the year, and if not, I guess we'll see. But I really doubt that they're going to take that long to get another set out. I think we're going to see it within the first quarter. That's just my feeling, but you never know. So have a good day.